Margaret always thought slowing down was just part of aging, until the day she sat perfectly still and still felt exhausted. If you felt drained without doing much, your home might be the reason. Not age, not illness, just quiet, sneaky energy thieves hiding in plain sight. Today we'll uncover 7 things in your home that quietly pull your energy down after 65. Let's start with something you see every day, but never realized was tiring you out. 1. Old lighting that strains the eyes. Margaret never gave much thought to the lighting in her hallway, until one foggy morning when she found herself squinting at a note she'd written the night before. "Did I write this with my eyes closed?" she muttered. The words were fuzzy, the shadows long, and the space felt dimmer than she remembered. It wasn't just about light, it was about mood. Aging eyes need more brightness to see comfortably, but many of us still rely on the same 40-watt bulbs we installed decades ago. And here's the truth. Most don't talk about poor lighting doesn't just affect how we see, it quietly affects how we feel. Dim corners can breed hesitation, shadows can feel heavy. When our homes are poorly lit, they start to whisper tiredness into our every move. Start simple. Swap out yellowing bulbs for daylight leads. Aim for layered lighting, ambient, task, and accent. Try brighter lamps in areas where you read, cook, or sew. Let your light rise with you. When you brighten a room, you're not just helping your vision, you're lifting the emotional weight off your space. The glow isn't just for your eyes, it's for your spirit. And don't worry about making it perfect overnight. One bulb at a time is more than enough. Too many visual distractions. If you've ever walked into your kitchen and felt tired before you even made your coffee, this one's for you. Margaret used to have a row of charming little souvenirs lined up on her windowsill. A few rooster figurines from a friend's trip to Italy, a ceramic mug from her grandson, an antique pepper mill that hadn't worked since the 80s. Each one had a story, but altogether they made her feel surrounded, not supported. What many don't realize is that our brain processes every object in our line of sight, even when we're not paying attention. That stack of unread magazines, the mismatched jars, the 6 pairs of scissors in the drawer that never quite closes. They don't shout, but they tug. This isn't about becoming a minimalist. It's about becoming a curator of your calm. Choose one surface, just one to clear. Maybe your bedside table, maybe the kitchen counter. Wipe it clean and place only 1 or 2 things that make you feel peaceful. A candle, a photo, a small plant. Notice how your eyes rest easier. Visual noise leads to mental fatigue, but quiet spaces, they invite breathing room. Let your home be a gentle place for your mind to land, not a loud one. 3. Heavy or hard to move furniture. When Margaret's daughter came by for tea one afternoon, she casually asked, "Mom, why do you still have that big cabinet there? You've never used it." Margaret looked at the hulking piece in the corner, full of linens she hadn't touched in years, and realized it wasn't there because she needed it. It was there because it had always been there. Furniture should support your life now, not the life you had 20 years ago. But many of us keep heavy, awkward pieces out of habit. The problem is, they don't just take up space, they take energy. Ever skirted around a clunky armchair every time you cross the room? Ever put off cleaning behind a sideboard because it's just too much? That's energy lost. Let's be honest, it can be hard to part with furniture that's still good. But usefulness is about now, not nostalgia. Here's a trick. Walk through your space like a guest. What feels open? What feels blocked? If a piece is more of an obstacle than a comfort, consider giving it a new home, whether that's to a neighbor, a relative, or a local charity. And for anything you do keep, think about ease. Can it be moved easily? Can it be rearranged without calling in backup? There's a deep emotional benefit to letting your space breathe. You're not getting rid of the past, you're making room for the present to feel lighter. Which corner of your home makes you feel the most mentally crowded? I'd love to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments below, and let's talk about it. 4. Noisy appliances or constant background sound. There was a quiet hum in Margaret's kitchen. At least, she thought it was quiet. until the power went out one evening during a storm. The moment was startling, not because of the darkness, but because of the silence. For the first time in years, there was no refrigerator buzz, no ticking clock, no background news channel, mumbling from the next room, just stillness. It felt strange, and then it felt calming. Here's something most people overlook. Background noise builds tension over time. You may not consciously notice the low rattle of an old fan or the droning hum of the fridge, but your nervous system does. It's always listening, always adjusting, and that adjustment, hour after hour, uses up your energy reserves, leaving you a little more fatigued than you should be. Start by doing a quiet scan. Sit in each room, turn off the TV, and simply listen. Is there a sound you've gotten used to that doesn't need to be there? If your refrigerator sounds like a lawnmower starting up, it may be time for a service or a more energy-efficient replacement. If a TV is always on for company, try soft instrumental music instead, or let the room breathe in silence for a while. Stillness isn't empty, it's restorative, and when your home stops humming, you might just start feeling more tuned in. 5. Unfinished projects and piles. Let's shift scenes for a moment. Margaret had a corner in her guest room she called the someday zone. A box of yarn she meant to turn into a blanket, a photo album half filled waiting for captions, a pile of old paperwork, taxes from a decade ago. Each time she walked past it she thought, I really should get to that, but she never did. Not because she was lazy, but because the pile itself had become a symbol of pressure. Here's the kicker. Unfinished tasks, even small ones, can weigh heavily on our mind. Psychologists call it the Zeigarnik effect. We remember unfinished things more than completed ones, which means that even if you're resting, your brain keeps returning to those piles and projects, creating low-level mental stress that never quite turns off. But there's no shame in not finishing everything. Life shifts, interests change. What felt urgent 5 years ago may no longer serve your peace. So here's a gentle idea. Pick one project or pile and decide, truly, if you still want to finish it. If the answer is yes, block out a completion hour in your week and enjoy the satisfaction of crossing it off your list. If not, release it, let it go, donate the supplies, toss the papers, forgive the expectation. Clearing unfinished projects doesn't mean giving up. It means giving yourself permission to be present. 6. Emotionally charged clutter. Some things stay in our homes long past their usefulness, not because we love them, but because we don't know how to let them go. Margaret kept a coat in her hallway closet for over 20 years. It belonged to her late husband. She hadn't worn it. She hadn't even unzipped the garment bag in a decade. But every time she opened that door, there it was. A quiet weight. Emotionally charged items are tricky. A broken clock from your mother's home, an old greeting card that reopens a wound, a box of photos you can't look at, but can't throw away either. Here's what many women over 65 quietly carry: the belief that holding on to certain objects is the same as holding on to love. But what if the memory doesn't live in the object? What if it lives in you? Decluttering sentimental items isn't about forgetting, it's about freeing. Start small. Choose one object that feels heavy, not happy. Hold it, remember. Then ask yourself, does this help me feel loved or stuck? If it hurts more than it helps, consider taking a photo of it and letting the item go, or write a little memory about it in a notebook you keep. Turn the physical into the emotional, and keep what truly serves your heart. Margaret eventually let go of the coat, but before she did, she wrapped it in tissue, wrote a letter to her husband, and donated it to a winter drive. That space in her closet, it now holds her favorite green scarf and peace. Have you ever kept something because you didn't know how to part with the memory attached? Share your story in the comments. Your voice might help someone else release a little weight too. 7. Stagnant air and scent traps. Margaret didn't notice the smell at first. It wasn't bad. It was just still, a faint mix of dust, old fabric, Maybe a hint of lavender from a sachet tucked away in a drawer years ago. But one morning, her neighbor Ruth stopped by, paused in the entryway, and said kindly, "It smells like memories in here." Margaret smiled. But hours later, that sentence stayed with her. We don't often realize it, but air holds energy. It carries not just scents, but stories. Rooms that haven't been aired in weeks, drapes that hold on to decades of dust, upholstery that's absorbed every season of life. All of it adds up to a kind of invisible heaviness. And over time, that heaviness turns into tiredness. There's no shame in it. We close windows because of weather, safety, or habit. We keep doors shut to preserve heat, or save cleaning. But air, fresh, flowing, alive, is one of the most overlooked sources of energy we have access to. Try this. Open a window in a room you never open. Pull the curtains all the way back. Let light and air touch the corners that haven't felt sunlight in years. Then, if you're up for it, wash or shake out one fabric item, just one. A curtain, a throw, a pillow cover. You'll be amazed what a single breeze can shift, not just in the room, but in your body. And here's a little emotional truth. Stagnant air often comes from spaces that have been emotionally paused. A guest room no longer used. A corner once occupied by a loved one. Freshening those spaces isn't betrayal. It's invitation to rejoin life. To breathe in now, not just yesterday. 8. Overstuffed storage spaces that drain decision-making power. The hallway linen cabinet was Margaret's secret chaos zone. You know, the one, open the door and pray nothing falls.
Towels she hadn't used since the early 2000s.
Faded pillowcases, tablecloths for tables she no longer owned. It was all still good, still folded, still there. What many people don't realize is that every time you open a cabinet or closet filled to the brim, your brain gets to work. Where is the thing I need? Why do I still have this? Should I keep it? Where would I even put it? And even if those questions don't reach the surface, your mental energy is leaking, like a dripping tap that never quite turns off. Decision fatigue is real. And for women in their 70s, who are already navigating shifting routines, health changes, and family dynamics, every extra decision, no matter how small, can leave you feeling just a bit more worn out by the end of the day. Here's what helped Margaret. She picked one shelf. Just one. She pulled everything off and asked herself one guiding question. Would I reach for this today if I needed it? If the answer was no, it went in a donation or discard pile. She even labeled baskets, weekly, rarely, and why do I still have this? The emotional magic. When that shelf was finished, it wasn't just about tidiness, it was about feeling in control. The next time she opened that cabinet, she felt calm instead of chaos. Her eyes softened, her shoulders lowered. Small change, big shift. And remember, decluttering isn't just about removing, it's about choosing. Choosing what supports you, energizes you, and fits who you are now. Not who you were, or who you might become, but who you are today, with all the wisdom and clarity you've earned. 9. Forgotten corners that quietly steal peace. Margaret always ignored the space behind the bedroom door. It was an awkward little corner, with a dusty basket of magazines, a rarely used cane, and an old plug-in heater that hadn't worked since before the pandemic. It wasn't messy, just forgotten, out of sight, out of mind. Until one day, she dropped her scarf and it rolled into that exact corner, and she crouched down to retrieve it. She froze. Dust, cobwebs, a candy wrapper from who knows when. That space had turned into a time capsule, not of joy, but of neglect. It dawned on her, if her home had a heartbeat, this corner might be where it felt the weakest. We often focus our energy on what's visible, coffee tables, counters, walkways, but it's the quiet, forgotten spaces that hold the most emotional residue. Corners that remind us of a project we meant to finish, a book we meant to read, a habit we gave up on. So here's a little invitation. Pick a corner you never pay attention to. Really look at it. What's sitting there that you've stopped seeing? Then wipe it clean. Rearrange. Light a small candle. Put a photo that makes you smile. Let it become alive again. The emotional benefit is deeper than aesthetics. It's about reclaiming space, reclaiming ownership. When you care for even the smallest corner, you send a message to yourself. I matter here. Margaret now keeps a small vase in that corner, with one fresh flower every week. It's her reminder that peace doesn't come from grand changes. It blooms in tiny cared-for places. What's one corner in your home you haven't looked at closely in years? Share it in the comments. We might all find the courage to reclaim ours together. 10. Unused rooms that carry emotional weight. Margaret had stopped opening the door to her second bedroom. It wasn't that it was messy or frightening. It was just full boxes. A spare bed, old paperwork, extra linens, and a silence that felt heavier than anything else in the house. It used to be her son's room, then a guest room, then storage. Now it was just a place she didn't want to look at, because looking meant feeling, and feeling meant acknowledging change. Unused rooms can act like emotional magnets. They hold memories and transitions, children growing up, loved ones passing, dreams that didn't happen. Over time, the closed door becomes symbolic. It says, I'll deal with this later. But later often becomes never, and the quiet emotional weight builds. Here's a thought. You don't have to empty the room. You just have to reclaim it. One drawer, one surface, one light turned back on. Margaret began by placing a soft chair by the window. She didn't move anything else, just sat and had her morning tea in that room for a week. Eventually she started sorting gently. Some days she only touched one item. Some days none at all. But every time she opened the door, it felt less like a past she was avoiding, and more like a space she could return to. Reclaiming a room isn't about renovation, it's about recognition. You're not erasing memory, you're giving yourself permission to re-enter your life fully. 11. Too many choices in one area, decision overload zones. Have you ever stood in front of your wardrobe and thought, I have nothing to wear, despite having 10 hangers too many, or opened a kitchen drawer and felt overwhelmed by 5 spatulas, 3 can openers, and scissors you forgot you even owned? Margaret once spent 20 minutes trying to decide which mug to use for her tea, not because the choice mattered, but because she had so many options that none of them felt right. That's the hidden drain. Choice fatigue. When every drawer is a buffet of options, your brain is constantly sorting, judging, deciding, and that mental juggling act, especially repeated daily, leaves you more tired than you realize. Simplifying doesn't mean limiting joy. In fact, it often does the opposite. Choose your favorite mug and donate the rest. Keep 2 good can openers. Yes, just 2. And when you do laundry, consider rotating the same few outfits that make you feel great. Margaret ended up creating a capsule zone in her closet, a rail with 5 complete outfits she loved and felt herself in. The rest went into a covered storage bin, still there, just not demanding attention every morning. The emotional gift of simplifying choice. Freedom. You gain back minutes, energy, and peace of mind, and you start your day already one decision lighter. 12. Sentimental gifts that guilt you into keeping them. There was a dusty decorative plate sitting on Margaret's bookshelf. It had never quite matched her home, and she didn't particularly like it. But it was a birthday gift from an old neighbor. She meant well. Margaret would say every time she dusted around it, but each time it brought a twinge of guilt more than joy. Here's the truth. Many of us avoid not all gifts belong in your forever home, and keeping something out of obligation doesn't strengthen a relationship, it silently burdens it. Emotional guilt clutter sneaks in when you feel you should hold on to something, even when it doesn't serve you. And for many women, especially those raised to be gracious and accommodating, saying no to a gift, even years later, can feel like rejecting the giver. But it's not. Margaret finally packed away the plate after asking herself one question. Would I buy this for myself today? The answer was no. So she thanked the gift in her mind, wrote a small memory about the neighbor in her journal, and donated it to a local shop. And guess what? That shelf now holds a small potted plant, and Margaret says it makes her smile every morning. Letting go of guilt gifts opens up space, not just physically, but emotionally. It affirms that your home belongs to you. What's something you've been holding on to just because you should? I'd love to hear your reflections in the comments. Let's support each other in choosing joy over obligation. 13. Decor that doesn't reflect who you are anymore. Margaret had always adored floral wallpaper. In her 40s, it was her signature. Roses in the guest room, violets in the kitchen, even dainty prints in the hallway. But now, at 72, something had changed. One afternoon, sitting quietly with a cup of tea, she caught herself staring at a pattern of pink peonies and thought, "This doesn't feel like me anymore." It wasn't ugly, it just didn't belong to this version of her. Our homes hold layers of our past selves, some beautiful, some outdated. As we age, we evolve, often in ways we don't stop to acknowledge. And sometimes, our environment forgets to keep up. We stay surrounded by pieces that no longer reflect our tastes, our rhythm, or our energy. But here's the good news. Updating doesn't have to mean overhauling. Margaret didn't rip down all the wallpaper. She simply added a modern print above the mantel. She swapped one overly frilly curtain for something lighter and cleaner. Think about what colors, shapes, and textures feel like you today. Maybe it's fewer florals, more earth tones. Maybe it's bold shapes instead of delicate lace. When your space mirrors who you are now, it doesn't just look better, it feels right, and that rightness is energizing. 14. Holding on to objects just in case. Margaret kept a rolling cart in her pantry for years, not because she used it, but because she might use it someday. It had wheels that squeaked, a handle that stuck, and the memory of her late mother insisting, "Don't throw things away, you never know when you'll need them." The just-in-case mindset is deeply rooted, especially in women who've lived through scarcity, caregiving, or frequent change. We're taught to prepare, to plan, to hold on to that extra casserole dish or winter coat, just in case someone needs it. But eventually the weight of all those maybes can crowd out the life we're living now. When Margaret finally donated the cart, she felt two things, guilt and then relief. It wasn't just about the object, it was about releasing the pressure to be ready for everything. Here's a gentle rule to try. If you haven't used it in 2 years, and it doesn't serve a clear purpose in your daily life, it's probably safe to let it go. And if you're still unsure, place it in a box with a date. If you don't reach for it within 6 months, you have your answer. Releasing just-in-case items opens the door to trust. Trust that you have what you need. Trust that if life surprises you, you'll adapt. And trust that your space doesn't need to be a storage closet for worry. 15. Living without a weekly reset ritual. After clearing out so much physical and emotional weight, Margaret realized something unexpected. Her home finally felt like hers again. But peace, she learned, isn't something you achieve once and keep forever. It's something you tend to, like a plant or a friendship. So she created a quiet ritual. Every Sunday afternoon, she walks slowly through her space, holding a soft cloth in one hand and a cup of herbal tea in the other. She opens a few windows, straightens her reading chair, waters the plant in the hallway, and most importantly, she listens, not to noise, but to how her home feels. You see, energy drains creep back in when we're not paying attention. A stack of mail that lingers, a light bulb that dims, a hallway that becomes a storage zone again. But with a weekly reset, you catch the small shifts before they become burdens. A reset doesn't have to be long or hard. Set aside 30 minutes, put on music you love, touch each room with care. Ask, what can I put back in order today, to make tomorrow feel lighter? For Margaret, this ritual became more than a habit. It became a conversation with her home, a chance to say, "Thank you for holding me, let me hold you too." Do you have a ritual or routine that helps you feel more at peace in your home? If not, what's one gentle step you could start with this week? Share it in the comments. I'd love to know how you reset your space. Who knew a few dusty corners and creaky carts could drain you like a phone with 3 apps open? But now you've got the power back in your hands. Drop a comment below. What's the first energy drainer you're kicking out? Let's trade stories, laughs, and maybe a mug or two.